Kia ora, my name is William Durning and I'm running in the other race, that's for the Waikato Regional Council. So I'm a dad, a husband, and I've been a business owner here in Hamilton for the last 22 years. It's important when looking at the Regional Council to be finding a partner that will be supporting initiatives around multimodal transportation, not just around the city and not just around our region, but actually beyond that. I've got a vision to see not only our city, but our region connecting more integrally with the likes of Auckland and the Bay of Plenty. And cycling and other means of transportation is going to be critical for that. You already make significant contributions through your rates in public transportation, which is divested through the Regional Council with partners like the city. I ask that you choose a better future and candidates that will be looking to increase what we've already done and build on some of the initiatives that you'll hear today for the future. My name is William Durning and I'm running for the Waikato Regional Council.
Katoa ko, Maxine Banniston, Takawingawa. We all deserve better value for money from council, and that's what I offer. Apart from opposing the pay increase for our new CEO, I believe that there's other better ways that we can be spending our money in Hamilton. We do spend way too much money and time supporting car drivers, and I don't want to knock them because I'm one of them. But what I want us to be able to do is explore ways to be able to find better transport solutions. It's a part of what I'm really interested in being able to explore. I live in Hamilton East. We need to have easier ways for me to get to where I need to in the city, and great ways for our rest of our citizens to be able to get around. That includes using our buses, having better timetabling on those buses, making sure that we've got great places to be able to get off and on, and ensure that we've got good vision, etc. for our other modes of transport. I don't necessarily agree with Margaret in terms of the shared pathways. I think that with courtesy from all of our users, we can be educated to use those transport the current infrastructure. My family is Dutch, and I visit from time to time when I can, and love the country and really enjoy the real cycling culture that has grown in that town. They didn't start out that way, of course, and it's something that Hamilton and the Waikato can embrace. We're small enough and flat enough to be able to take the best from around the world in order to be able to bring it here to deliver it to ours. Cyclists have the right of way in Holland, and that's something I'd really love to be able to see. Kia ora, Maxine Banniston.
It's a relatively flat city, and we have reasonable weather. On the face of it, it sounds like it should be ideal for cycling, but when I was reading this afternoon, it was interesting to find that weather's got nothing to do with determining how popular cycling is in a city. In fact, in Utrecht, they say you're not made of sugar, meaning that you won't melt if you go out and cycle in the rain, as they're saying. But the key factors are actually infrastructure and safety. Having a dedicated cycle lane is a start, but protected cycle lanes are the gold standard. And also important is the surface, as Margaret said, lighting and safe places to lock up your bikes, because people want to be free from theft and damage to their bikes. We all know that at rush hour at the moment, our intersections and bridges are clogged with cars, mostly with occupants. Yes, we have some painted lines, we have some tri-barriers, we have a few stretches of off-road cycleways, and people do cycle. However, as we've heard often recently, it's not uncommon to hear complaints of cyclists being cut off, knocked by passing cars, or having car doors open onto them. We're finding some good things happening. Some workplaces are beginning to provide bike lockers and showers for their workers, but many, of course, do not at this point in time. Overseas, places that have large populations, cities in the world, where there is a critical mass of cyclists, have more dedicated infrastructure, which goes without saying. But some cities that have historically not been used for cycling are becoming cycling friendly and building kilometres and kilometres more of cycleways. And just finish this one point. And actually, it's not really to provide for cyclists. The perverse driver of that is congestion and low carbon economies. But what they're doing overseas, it's working. We can learn from that.
Candidate in the East Ward. My focus in terms of how it relates to cycling is really very much from a family perspective. So I've got 3 school-aged children. They all, 2 of them bike 4Ks each way to and from school. It's very important for us that they can get there safely. What I think that is fabulous about where we are in the northeast is that we do have Waikato Drive, we've got the underpasses, we've got safe ways for them to be escorted from the road, which is great. We have the new town centre, which they have to pass through to get to the junior high school. However, there hasn't actually been a lot of thought put into how those bikes then connect and how the students are around that new shopping precinct that's going through. And so it's that sort of infrastructure, and it's thinking ahead for the children and for everybody to be able to get through and around safely. I think in terms of recreational cycling, it'd be nice to have again the things that link up and everything that works together. You don't necessarily want to go for about 5 minutes in that direction and 5 minutes in that direction, so you actually go to places and safely without running over glass and your tyres popping. I think really that I'd like to see council with a focus on getting people to and from where they need to go in a safe manner and separated from cars and off the footpaths. I was at the Disability Persons Association yesterday, and they were talking about scooters as their particular accessibility issue that's on the rise. So the Lime scooters, how they're left in the middle of the pathways, how if you've got a cane, how you need to get around it, they're hitting it with their shoulder before their cane hits the scooter. So we just need to find ways to enable everybody to work together and safely. And I think that comes down to education. I'm very, very strong on education across all elements of council. So I'd like to see some money put into promotion and education around that too. And finally, in terms of planning, we've got new communities on the rise. I think that when you look at well-designed spaces that put people first, they are amazing places to be, and they draw crowds in. So that's what
I'm standing again in the east. It's been my pleasure to work with a whole lot of you in the cycle space for the last 2-3 years. It's been a heck of a lot of fun. I'll never forget my first ever argument in council about it was with one Mr. Gary Mallett, and his same old argument, you'll still hear him belting it out as well. People are choosing to use their cars. They're choosing to use their cars. My simple argument to him is, well, Gary, if your roads didn't connect, you wouldn't be using your car, would you? Fast forward that to yesterday, where I had the pleasure of having lunch with Julianne Genter, the Associate Minister of Transport, and she's probably one of the most pro-cycling people you could ever meet. I thought, wow, I've come a long way, this is really exciting. And we, by the end of that lunch, were fizzing out, writing out things on paper, and I was trying to convince her that Hamilton, and I'm absolutely confident, will be world standard. We will be the cycle capital of the country. It's all around us. We've got the home of cycling down there. We've got Te Awa, which will be ready in 2-3 years. I don't think people realise how good that is going to be. We've got a great, big, beautiful spine that is going to be one of the finest cycle paths in the country, bar none. Right? We've got the Waikato cycle plan, which we've finally signed into now. The Hauraki rail trails, the Karangahaki, etc., etc. Why aren't we? No, we shouldn't just be setting the standard for, hey, let's just be safe and make sure people can commute. We should be world standard. Everything we're going to do has got to be world standard. So she was very excited about this. Then it came to us into money. Then the conversation turned a little bit. You see, the way it works with cycling, you'll be aware that we get subsidised by NZTA, and NZTA threw us a real clanger this last year, and all our wonderful projects like the school link, etc. They said, oh, by the way, back to the planning stage. We can't quite construct that yet. The money's kind of been oversubscribed, it's run out. So the thrust of yesterday's conversation was about getting creative. I said, well, if you can't help us with the money, you have got to let us be creative with what we do, our tactical urbanism. You have got to help us out. And so she put us in touch with some really cool people in there, and she's very keen for that vision. So I didn't even have got you my first note. Anyway,
I've been councillor for a while. One of the things that has really pressed my button on council is working on transport, and particularly balanced transport systems. Like most New Zealand cities, Hamilton has got an unbalanced transport system. All the money pretty much goes into roading, and pretty much all of that roading for cars and trucks and so forth. The job that some of us, like Mark and myself, believe is in front of us is how to redress that imbalance, and that's what we've been working hard on. We have been stymied in some ways by the lack of government funding at the moment. That isn't going to last forever. That school length We've allocated about $12 million of ratepayers' money, but we haven't got the matching $12 million from government yet. When we will, you're going to have a north-south dedicated cycle and public transport route on the east side along the Peach Grove Road corridor, linking all of those schools. We've got some good examples though of some things we have done in Hamilton. Rosatuna High School, which Anna mentioned, has got as far as we know, the highest cycling proportion of any high school in the country. 60% of kids going there cycle. Wow. Their problem last year was they didn't have enough cycle racks. Now, how long was it since you heard a school with that problem? A great problem to have. And we want to keep it that way. We want to use them as an example for the other schools. Closing those gaps is going to help with that. It's going to make parents more encouraged to send their kids to school. Footpaths is another big issue. We've done a full audit of every footpath in the city, found 28,000 faults. We've just found that in the last few months. They're working on them already. That's going to take the best part of 10 years to fix, unfortunately. That's how far behind our infrastructure has fallen. We've trebled the expenditure on footpaths, but it's still going to take a long time to fix. But we have started it. What we really want, the final thing I'll say to you, is your voices. Because there are a lot of lobbyists for cars that come and speak to us, tell us how we've got to do better for cars. We want the cyclists and the walkers to come to us, not just Julie, but the rest of you as well, to come to us and tell us what more we need to do. That's going to help our case immeasurably. Thank you.
Let's move along.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Lois Hatsukoinga. I want to start off by telling you a tiny bit about myself. So I'm the youngest CEO of an electricity retailer in New Zealand. So I do core services for a job. I'm also on the governance board of Go Eco, which is one of the largest sustainability charities in the Waikato, and I have to give a shout out to Lloyd, who's here, because our flagship project is Hivolution, and Lloyd picks up that food waste on his bicycle and brings it to Go Eco. So
it's right out there.
And it's right out there. When I moved to Hamilton about 8 years ago, I left my car at home. So I grew up in the Coromandel, and I thought, I'm moving to the big city. I don't need my car. They're going to have buses. They're going to have cycleways. And within about 6 months, I was like, Mom, I need my car. Because I tried cycling around our city, and the amount of times I was nearly hit by cars or buses made me realize, oh boy, no. And it really put me off. And it was something that made me so sad about Hamilton, was that it didn't live up to my expectations of what a city should provide for us. And it's really critical, I think, when we talk about cycling infrastructure, that it's safe. You know, I want to acknowledge there's people here who have lost loved ones cycling in our city. That not only affects, obviously, their well-being, but also our well-being. You know, when we're scared to be out in our city, you're not going to encourage people to get out there more. I was actually at Rosatuna High School the other day. Oh my God, how was it already a minute? And what I noticed was that, there were tons of cycle racks, but actually there was no cycleway from, say, Horsham Down Road through to the high school. And I thought, hold on, we've got, Rosatuna is a relatively small suburb. We're still not putting in this core infrastructure. I really want Hamilton to be joyful. I want us to get out there. It's secretly also climate action, which is something that I love. So let's make sure that we're leading the way. Let's make sure that we use our geographic advantage because we're so flat. And let's be the city of the future.
Community lawyer, you might know me as a student who served the government a couple of years ago, so I'm very passionate about climate change, but also transport, so 2 minutes is not enough. So I'm from Hamilton, but I've been living up and working in Auckland the last couple of years, and I almost never use a car up there. I bike to and from work because it's a shared path, it's kind of crap, it's a long time you drive, but it keeps me safe. There's buses, there's trains. And I guess what I've seen up there is that if you build it, the people will come. And we don't need to kind of say, do we have enough people interested in cycling to build this infrastructure? We need to put it in. And the ridership up there in Auckland has been going up and up and up, and they're counting it with, something going in different areas in Auckland to measure that. So in terms of biking infrastructure, I think first the key thing is protected lanes, and you don't have to spend heaps of money on this. There's these concrete barriers they're about this high, this big. You bolt them onto the road, and they work perfectly fine, and they're relatively fast and cost-effective to put in. So protecting cyclists is the first thing. Intersections and roundabouts are scary. I've been hit on my bike going through a roundabout in Hamilton, and it's not the first time being hit on my bike, and you know, turning right at a roundabout is really stressful. So we shouldn't just give up when we get to roundabouts and intersections, but actually find real solutions to them. And so that would be another priority. And the last one is actually connecting our cycleways, because when it suddenly says, hey, cycleway ends here, and it's like, does this happen to the road? So beyond that, walking is really important too, but I don't have any more to say. Thank you so much.
Have you seen down there? It's absolutely stunning. There's been hundreds of millions of dollars on it, but they did it for the right reasons. They did really, really well. Hagley Park is a really interesting thing, because we were talking, remember we were down there, we were talking about, do you put lines on shared paths? And they said, absolutely not, because lines actually give you the feeling of you are safer than you think, and people go faster. So they said, let's just stop and watch Hagley Park. And what's been really interesting is because it's got scooters, walkers, cyclists, etc., going all over the place, everyone's just calmed the heck down themselves without overdoing it. So that was kind of my dream of Claude's. Open up Claude's Bridge, and everyone will calm down. You know, things have absolutely crossed over the next few months. But that's the theory behind that.
Good. Did they widen them to 4 metres?
In Hagley Park? Oh, I think they already were about that. Yeah, it was like a runway down there. It's like that. You're absolutely right. Yes.
So I want to acknowledge that the way that I got here today was, I'm going to be generous and say I e-scooted about halfway. Slight exaggeration. And then Anna picked me up in her car, and then we drove past Sarah, who was walking. And so we actually, we took multimodal to get here. And I forgot to mention
a weird
in my
version of a
minutes
walking
that
bus.
I actually don't own a car anymore because my mum wrote it off. I was saying to my partner the other night, I don't want to buy a car. I feel like at this point it would be a compromise of my values to buy a car, because I don't want to live a life where I'm dependent on a car. And so our e-scooter is something that I use more and more, mostly because I'm a little bit lazy and using my bike. My mum has an e-bike, and so I have a normal bike, and it's just not really fair anymore when we go cycling together. But the thing around safety is that from having this e-scooter, which I now rely on because I don't have a car, absolutely e-scooters should not be on the footpath. But also, if I go on the road, I become very aware, very quickly, how squishy I am in a human body. And it's just like, you know, I have to make a decision about the best of a bad option, and it's so far on the footpath. And I think that it's a real no-brainer if there were cycleways, you know, connecting our city everywhere. Of course I would use them on my e-scooter. And a big example of this I can think of is that going from Hamilton East at the university into the CBD, which is you'd think a relatively highly used route for cyclists, for e-scooter users. You know, you've got your sort of green painted line on the road, or you've got your footpath, and I think like that's one thing I'd really, really love to see is a better, that route in particular, have a safe option.